on the dot. So I think it's time to get going, everybody. I'm going to say Anin Kinagwaya. That's a warm Ojibwe welcome to everybody. We are happy to see everyone here. It looks like we have about 20 people with us. So that is great. We thank you for being here. And I'll start. My name is Kristie Goforth. I'm a Monona City Alder person, and I'm also a candidate for Monona Mayor. I have been hosting these town hall sessions, and they've actually turned out to all be fairly hard conversations, but they're necessary conversations that we just have to have in order for all of us to collectively come together and move our community forward and support each other and find a way for us all to live more harmoniously together. Before I introduce our panelists, I'm just really quickly going to give a shout out to a Monona neighbor named Lexi, who really got the ball rolling on this forum. I saw her post on Nextdoor and calling for action and calling for all of us to start working together to support our neighbors, our elderly, and our police department, because we know they can't be everywhere. So thanks to you, Lexi, for the nudge. All right, so I'm going to introduce our panel, and I'm going to start with our interim police chief, and that's Sara Deuman. Sara, do you want to tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. As Kristie mentioned, my name is Sara Deuman. I am currently the interim chief of police after our previous chief retired 16 years after starting his second career in law enforcement here in Wisconsin. I have been with the Monona Police Department for 23 years now, and I of course started in patrol, worked up through the school resource officer position, became detective lieutenant, and then, that's actually where my title lies prior to being the interim chief.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sara. I didn't know you were a school resource officer, so I learned something new about you too.
It was a short period of time, about a year, a little over a year.
Awesome. And then I'll introduce our Monona police officer, Nate Reynolds. Everybody knows Nate. Nate, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
I'm the community relations officer with the department. I've been here 15 years now, since yesterday, actually, February 1st of 06 was my 15th anniversary. I started in dispatch full time, was there for a couple of years, and was hired in patrol. So I always wanted to be the community relations officer since I started. Started this October of 2019, or September 20th of 2019 was my initial start date. So still getting started, still getting some things rolling, but I'm excited to see where these things go. So, and again, thanks for having me. And everyone that's here, thanks for being here.
Awesome. And then we have Gloria Reyes, the CEO of Reyes Public Safety. Gloria, tell us about yourself.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It's so good to be here. I am a former law enforcement officer. I worked for the Madison Police Department for 13 years before I transitioned as deputy mayor to public safety for the city of Madison. And current elected official, president of the Madison School Board, and currently working as CEO of Briar Patch Youth Services. We focus on providing services to our at-risk youth, justice-involved youth. So it's a really new position I'm in. But then I'm also a CEO of Reyes Public Safety. I do consulting around racial equity within law enforcement and really finding innovative ways to promote healthy and safe communities through innovation and really focusing on community initiatives and approaches to reducing violence and crime in communities.
Awesome. Hey, Gloria, I'm just going to let you know you're a little bit quiet, so I don't know if there's a way you can crank up the mic a tiny bit, but
Sure. Yep.
just give you a heads up there.
How does this sound? Is this
Try
better?
again.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay. All right.
You might have to project a little.
Okay.
Okay. And then, I don't know, some people may know my story. I'm going to chime in a little bit from my perspective, which is one that I think I relate a lot to these kids that we see, my next door feed is filled with the kids coming into neighborhoods and looking for cars that are unlocked. And so I was, my parents both dropped out of high school at age 16 because they got pregnant with my sister. A year later, I was born. And then a year after that, my dad left and my mom was left at age 18 with two very young children. And it was, she worked around the clock and she had an amazing work ethic, but we were left alone and unsupervised all the time. And it's just a different kind of perspective when you're, 4 and 5 years old and you're, getting yourself breakfast, you're getting yourself dinner, and you're putting yourself to bed at night. We were the kids that didn't have, parents that would come to our school events or parents to help us with schoolwork. And so I really never thought I would be a constructive part of society. So it's just such a privilege to be here with all of you today. Unfortunately, my sister did not survive our childhood. And I don't say any of this for pity. It's all a part of what's made me who I am today. But just I will occasionally chime in with a perspective that comes from that standpoint. So I think I'll go over a couple housekeeping things. I am recording the session and this will be uploaded to YouTube. I'll do that after we're done so anybody can watch at their convenience. We're set to talk until 8 o'clock tonight. We might run over, we'll see how that goes. We want this to be a conversation with you. So we would love to hear from you. Please put your questions in the comment fields below and I'll be looking on my phone and floating those questions out to the panel. I do have a few questions lined up in advance. I think one thing to acknowledge is that we all have different perspectives and some people might be saying, crime? What crime? We don't have any crime here, because they maybe came from a large city where this doesn't seem like a lot of crime. But then there's a lot of people in our community that this is really new to them and they're scared and they've never faced or seen this kind of rash of crime across our community. So we just have to respect that everybody brings a different perspective forward. So, and we're all here to learn and listen and, for the collective safety of our community. So I think that's it for housekeeping. So I have got the first question and it's, what are some things that you would like citizens to help you with in a daily, daily in regard to safety? The comment also says, I hear a lot about not having enough police. So how can citizens help you? Or are citizens not allowed to help? How about Nate? Do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, as far as citizens being allowed to help, it's all about crime prevention, right? So protecting your property, securing your property, what's important to you. As far as not being able to help, and we're trying to implement this across the city. You've seen things called neighborhood watch, right? We're trying to maybe work away from it a little bit and rebrand it a little bit. The city of Madison Police Department and another city in Iowa, they've really kind of taken another kind of a different approach, calling it the Good Neighbor Project. And what a Good Neighbor Project is, everyone's asking, when should I call? What should I do? And the basis of that project is just getting to know your neighbors, understanding what's in your neighborhood. And that's the first step. So instead of us looking at what's wrong with our city, in Monona, you live in a great community, and keep that in mind. And it's important for you to keep that. And it's up to you as citizens to keep that. And a way we can do it is by celebrating our city, rather than worrying about what's wrong with it, but celebrate what's good. Concentrate the context we do have, get to know each other, develop those lines of communication with each other as citizens first, and then trust in us as your police department, because we're here to serve you. And Kristie, you mentioned before that, well, I'm coming from a big city, this isn't important, or you have people saying, hey, some of these crimes that have been occurring, hey, if they matter to you, they matter to us, because we're here to serve you. So keep that in mind. The way you can is by, getting a hold of me, getting a hold of us, the Monona Police Department, and saying, hey, what can we do to help? As we develop this program over time. And it's something that's going to have to evolve here as we work through the pandemic. There are some challenges there. Getting it started virtually is something that we've done, but it's far from a finished product. So if you're out there, if you're watching and you want to get involved, that's how you can do it. Letting us know, getting to know your neighbors, and working from there.
Gloria or Sarah, do you have anything to add on that?
No, I agree with Nate. I mean, I think it really is, it starts with community, right? And really building a strong community that is looking out after each other. And that's why I really like the Good Neighbor Project, because it really is about taking care of each other. You know, we have to do more of that. We've come so far into like just really living in isolation and taking care of ourselves. But it really isn't important to make sure that your neighbor closes the garage door at night. You know, I don't know how many times I've forgotten to do that. And then law enforcement can't do this alone. I mean, I worked as a neighborhood officer, and the best innovative crime prevention strategies were in partnership with residents, neighborhood associations, you know, public health, and others who really came together to solve an issue in our safety issue in the neighborhood. And so law enforcement can't do this alone. And so I really like this question because it really centers us around building strong communities. Is really important in safe communities.
Do you have anything to add, Sarah? Oh, you're on mute.
Am I still?
There we go. You're good now.
Okay. All right. I clicked it. Sorry. I really don't have much to add other than to just echo what Nate and Gloria have said. You know, we have anywhere from, let's say, 2 to 4 officers on a shift. And, you know, nobody knows your neighborhood like the people who live there. So the officers can, you know, pass through, even if they're passing through a couple of different times, different shifts, they don't always know and see what is considered normal or, you know, what might be suspicious. So we really count on the community to report those things to us.
And Gloria, you're still just a little bit quiet, so just give me a heads up in case you need to shout it out. I think, you know, I want to give a shout out to Kim Richmond, who has kind of spearheaded some of the Good Neighbor projects around the community. You know, I think part of that is, you know, the younger, stronger residents like myself, I'll say I'm younger and stronger, really have an obligation to look out for our elderly and watch out for them. I have a couple of neighbors myself, and I really love looking out for them. You know, I have concerns about them, and their safety is really important, and they're the vulnerable in our community. So is there any pitfalls or anything like that we need to watch out for? Because like, I think the Good Neighbor Project is the new evolution of the Neighborhood Watch. Would anyone like to address that, the pitfalls of the neighborhood watches and sometimes, you know, people not knowing when to stop?
I mean, I think, you know, crime, or not, the neighborhood watch, you know, has turned it was something really positive, but then over the years, you get neighbors, residents who are just overzealous, like they almost want to be like cross the line in keeping their community safe, right? They follow people, right? It has this really, it's turned out negative, and there is a fine line, right? There's a police role that you want to have. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm trying to speak louder, but okay.
I can.
There is the police role, right, that you want police to follow up on, but ultimately you want to keep yourself safe, and so that's why I really like the Good Neighbor, the Good Neighbor program, because you know it really is watching out for each other in a positive way, and so you're not overzealous, you're not crossing the line, and so oftentimes with neighborhood watches it became that, and so and I really like how the partnership with your law enforcement your local law enforcement department in you know in the Good Neighbor Project.
I'm going to share something quick. It was a graphic I got out of the Good Neighbor Project Facebook group. I'm not sure if you can see it yet, but it's called the 9-house model. And so you are the X in the middle, and those are your neighbors around you. And if you live in an apartment building, you could think of similar, you know your neighbors around you. And so the goal is really getting to know each of those neighbors and making sure you're looking out for them. I got a text earlier this week from one of my neighbors telling me my garage door was open. And so it's really great to know, you know who they are, you know who's coming and going. And I think it's just a really kind of a nice little tool and a great goal for all of us to get to know our neighbors a little bit better. Anyone else have any comments on that?
I think, as you mentioned before, with the pitfalls of what we're worried about and being overzealous. I mean, if you're genuine and it's the person's, so if you're calling in a person, it's their actions that you're suspicious of, not them in particular, but what they're doing is what's concerning to you. And if you stick to that, someone's actions, there won't be any issues. And that's what we need to focus on. And that's a way you can, there's one way that you can avoid pitfalls from that experience. That's, but we following neighborhood watches in the past.
Someone posted a question in the Facebook, and I think it's a real good one. It says, in addition to physical crime and growing crime, a lot of people are being targeted with cyber crimes. Examples are social engineering, ransomware attacks, etc. What is the Monona Department doing from a communication platform for our residents? Any Sara or Nate want to take that one?
Found ourselves with attempting to be the target of some of these crimes, email solicitations, those kinds of things. I'm sorry, I have a rambunctious dog.
Your dog is wrestling.
Yeah, he is. So I apologize. But so we do what we can, but to be fair, there's only so much that we can do when this crime is extending across the internet. Oftentimes the perpetrators are maybe not even in the United States. So we work, pretty closely with the Internet Crime Complaint Center, so that when we do have those type of crimes, we do refer citizens there to make the complaint, because they kind of are a clearinghouse of gathering information about different scams and attacks that are happening. And they have more of an ability to investigate that type of thing.
And just go off with what Sara said. I mean, what things that we've done, I don't know how much you follow our social media pages, but on Facebook, and for example, the fraudulent stimulus checks, or the stimulus check scams are coming. We mentioned those, reference by email or text message how the IRS would not contact you, reference those things. So we've given a few examples. You'd have to go back to them through the years. I mean, I don't have any others that come to the top of my head, but I know there's been several the past year that we've mentioned to give examples. So that's one thing. If you do follow our social media feeds or some other police departments in the area as well, they'll give some scams that have come up. And if you see it and you're familiar with that being a scam, you're less likely to fall victim to it. And some of the people that have fallen for these scams, I mean, it happens. I mean, they're well done. It's what they do. So, but by all means, we'll keep sharing those. And if anyone else has an experience that they were able to get past, you can share your experience with us, and we'd be more than happy to share with our social media pages and neighborhood groups as well.
Would any of you want to comment on something I heard just last week about a new trend that people have seen on the west side of Madison, where maybe someone rings your doorbell late at night or middle of the night. It might be a woman who seems to be in distress, but it's actually a scam, and a lot of people will fall for that. And then they open the door and maybe they get maced, or there's, something happens. Do you have any advice for people when they get those late night knocks on the door? What should we do?
Well, my advice would be to, trust your instincts in those situations. If you live in a neighborhood that doesn't have a lot of foot traffic late at night and someone's coming knocking on your door, I can understand why that would set off a radar in your own head, like, hey, this doesn't seem right. You can always call us. When in doubt, call us. If you can see the person without answering the door, if you see that they're in distress, but if they don't need immediate medical attention, you can always call us and we can come investigate. Give us a description of what the person's wearing. If they do leave before we get there, let us know a direction of travel. Do your best with a physical description, and we'll make contact and make sure everything's okay. If you don't feel comfortable making contact with that person, it's entirely up to you.
Okay, do you think is it always best to call 911 first before opening the door, or what do you think?
That's what I would do. I think just personally as a woman, I would not, like, if it's in the middle of the night, somebody is hysterical. Of course you want to help and support, right? But I think, as Nate said, is really just try to take down as much information as you can, but don't open the door. And you can still help somebody by calling 911 right away. And you can even yell through the door, police are on their way. But don't answer the door. And so many people have, like, the Ring, the cameras, all that is good to have to document that information. But I would definitely just call 911 in that situation, because it could be that the person needs help, right? You don't know. And so that's a really good way of helping them while being safe yourself.
Excellent. Now, Gloria, you just brought up the Ring cameras. I saw some talk, I think it might have been from Lexi, talking about, can someone tell me about the program where you can allow the police access to your Ring camera? Can someone describe that, or how that looks?
Sure. So it's I believe it's called Neighborhood Ring. I might be getting the name slightly off, but I actually did just utilize it about a week or two ago, I think, when we exchanged emails, Kristie, with that incident that happened nearby in your neighborhood. Okay. So what that allows law enforcement to do is to, we can draw like an area around the location of a crime and send a message from Ring directly to the homeowners that are registered to have them check their video and see if there might be some video footage of the date and time that we might be looking for. It's completely anonymous. We don't see where the messages go to, and it's up to the residents to reply to us. It's, there's no force involved, but they have the option to check their cameras and provide that information if they want to.
Are there many people participating in that program right now, Sara?
We don't really get information on the number of people that are registered. I can tell you in this most recent case where I put out the request, I didn't get any responses, but
okay.
It's always, worth a try, because you never know. A lot of times we do, when we have had other people bring forward their Ring videos, it's somebody that's aware that there was a crime in the area and they contact us and say, hey, I have this. So most times that works for us. But it's just an additional tool that we can try to utilize to get more information.
All right. There's another question we've gotten. Is there any possibility of setting up a Ride with a Cop program? He said he used to do that in Maine Township back in the 90s. Citizens would ride with a beat cop, and it was a great way for residents to develop a relationship with the police department.
I don't think any of us would object to something like that here. We just obviously we have to get through the challenge of the pandemic here as we move forward. But that's something, we have had ride-alongs in the past. And that's something that's going to be higher up than me. But as far as our patrol division, they're always very welcoming to people coming in. And we have been in the past, I'd imagine we would be in the future. So that's something we could exhaust in the future.
Yeah, that's probably quite enlightening, I bet, onto what kind of crime and what kind of things you're seeing on a regular basis. Okay, what mutual aid networks are already active or needed in Monona?
Referring to like, I guess are you talking about like mutual aid for other police agencies?
Your audio's gone out a little bit, Sarah. It's just real quiet.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. So are you referring to like other police agencies? Should we need assistance, or?
This was a question that was texted to me. I think it was talking about maybe offering support to individual, I don't know if it was tied to mental health or, I think it was something like that. Support of individuals that you're trying to, deal with.
I can touch, I guess, quick on as far as like mutual aid for other police agencies. That's something that we can get assistance from just by. Oh, this is bad, really.
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go.
So we can get assistance from other police agencies, surrounding us. So that is okay. Mental health wise, we reach out pretty regularly to Journey if need be. And then, we sometimes have a list of resources for homeless shelters, those kinds of things that we are able to provide people that are in need of those. I guess if anybody has any more in-depth information about what they think they might be asking, I'd welcome their comments as well.
And I mean, just to build off what Sarah said, mutual aid's great. We'll use it from other agencies when we're just a little bit overrun, where we have officers, we don't have officers available. We have 2 officers on one call and we only have 2 officers working. Another call for service comes in that needs immediate police response. We would call in another police department to see if we put a mutual aid request in. We're very fortunate to have what we have in surrounding areas. We have a great relationship with obviously the City of Madison Police Department, the Town of Madison Police Department, a great relationship with them, and the Sheriff's Office, McFarland. I mean, everybody around us, we know very well. It's not something we want to rely on very often. It's not because we don't have faith in them, but because this is our jurisdiction. This is our backyard. We know it, and you want us to respond. And because we know the challenges that may be within a particular neighborhood, where it could be a few houses down. We know about this house where if we have an incident where it's an emergency situation, and we know where this person may be. We may understand that we're a mutual aid request unit. They might not understand that or know that or where to look for it. So, I mean, it's great to have, but at the same time, we want to be the ones making contact and on all the calls we can.
Did you have anything to add, Gloria?
Yeah, I mean, I think mutual aid is usually, it's a, all law enforcement agencies understand that term, in that, we do have policies that dictate how we use mutual aid and when we use mutual aid. Our dispatchers know, and everybody really knows in the certain circumstances of why we would need help. Oftentimes, as Nate said, it could be the Madison Police Department, it could be, the town, and they're really beneficial when it's needed. When there's a big call, there's a big incident happening. Madison would use it quite a bit when we just couldn't, there was something big happening in Madison, then we would need support from Monona or UW to help support calls for service. And so it is a practice and a policy that all police jurisdictions usually have.
Okay. Someone's asking about some statistics, and I know, thinking about these car break-ins that we've seen quite a bit. My street was hit, I think it was maybe a week ago. And I know I've talked to a lot of people in Monona that have experienced that. Do you want to tell us maybe where the statistics are right now, if you know, and kind of, I guess, what you think is why that is, and yeah, if we can just start a conversation around that topic.
I did. I ran our statistics over the last 5 years, and like you said, it's kind of a perspective thing. some people are used to more crime, some people are not used to this much crime. As our statistics show over the last 5 years, our violent crime is actually down by 10%. I know that, you know, it doesn't always seem like that to someone who is more directly impacted by that. So, for instance, you know, our violent crimes consist of like robbery, assault, weapons violation, those kinds of things. So again, those numbers are down this year over what they were last year, and kind of right in line with the, you know, pretty close to average numbers over the last 4 years anyway. Property type crimes also down. I attribute, you know, some of that to COVID and the shutdown. So that is not unexpected either. So, but given that, you know, these concerns have been raised by some of the citizens, one of the things that we have been asked to do by the current mayor is to work with like the fire department, the police department, public safety committee, and the senior center on kind of a safe at home public safety initiative. So we will be putting forth information, you know, just kind of how to protect yourselves on some of these crimes that you're seeing happening more often. The motor vehicle thefts, the thefts from motor vehicles, fire department perspective, you know, maybe, you know, fall prevention, you know, those kinds of things, senior center, you know, maybe things that the elderly can be looking for. And so that's something that our citizens are going to see starting with our e-newsletter that's going to be coming out in February.
Excellent.
Yeah, and just to build on what Sara said with the stats, I mean, you know, you can mention, hey, crime's down because of the pandemic, and she mentioned, you know, violent crime is down 10%. I mean, if you wanted to, you know, cut out 2020 because of the pandemic, I mean, 2018, the numbers were the same. 2017 was almost as much as 2020. So, you know, and calls for service 2017 was actually higher than 2019. You know, property crime 2015 and 2016 were higher than 2019. You know, so just a few of those things. It's, you know, in felony arrest, 2017 was actually greater than 2020. So the whole narrative that crime is on the rise, it isn't a correct narrative. It's cyclical. It comes and goes. It goes up and down. Probably if you look through 2010 or 2015, it'd probably be the same thing. So as far as I've heard that mentioned by many people as well, like, well, crime's on the rise, and it isn't. Again, you live in a great
community. What are your thoughts on something like an elderly task force, just a group of neighbors that are regularly checking in with elderly? And doesn't the department do some safety check-ins with elderly?
Well, I can tell you in 2020 we didn't, for obvious reasons, right? But, you know, in the past, I mean, our senior center does a terrific job in connecting us with the seniors as much as they can at the senior center. But as far as check-ins, things of that nature, I mean, seniors, you know, they're very independent people still. So, but understanding and connecting us with the correct people that we need to make contact with when appropriate, you know, we're certainly willing to do so. I mean, that's probably my favorite demographic to work with, to be honest with you, because I can't think of a more selfless population that just wants to help and wants the betterment of society than our seniors.
Nice. Okay.
Say something.
Yeah, go for it.
You know, as far as like check-ins, you know, anytime that we get a call from a family member or, you know, friend, maybe they can't get a hold of somebody, and a lot of times it is an elderly resident of ours, we do like a check welfare on them. So it's not necessarily a task force, but that's something that our officers regularly do.
I've seen you doing that on my street.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very nice. How do you manage that? Like, you have a database of the elderly that are, you know? Yeah, I'm curious how that works.
Based on calls, you know, so somebody has a concern, you know, maybe they haven't heard from one of their elderly parents, you know, since the day before, and that's not normal. They normally, you know, speak every day on the phone. We'll get those kind of calls. And so we'll definitely go out and just make sure everything's okay. And, there have been times where we've gone out, we found that somebody has fallen, and we'll summon EMS and get that person some help. Unfortunately, there's, other times where we find, that somebody has passed, and that's, unfortunate news that we have to pass along to the family as well.
Oh, absolutely. With the kids that are checking the cars nightly, what can we do? How is there any approach to working with those kids? What support networks are available to them?
So
Gloria, do you have, or
Kristie, if I could, before I forget, because I wanted to get this, but we moved on. When you mentioned car break-ins, it's very important that we can differentiate between the two, between car break-ins and vehicles that are just left unlocked.
oh yeah,
Last October, I believe it was last October, it was an anomaly. We had about 20 cars that were locked, nothing of value in them, and they were broken into anyway. And a lot of those people, those victims, let us know, and they were vigilant. They did everything right as far as we could tell, and they still suffered that fate. So we had a press release. We talked to the neighborhoods. We shared that information, and this is why the Good Neighbor Project can work. About a week after, we had a astute citizen call in, someone that was walking down driveways looking in the cars, called in, and our officers arrested that subject. So, and it was for other reasons as well. But in other words, this works. I mean, it works when you can involve people. And what can we do to prevent those things? You mentioned being concerned about the youth. This is a crime of opportunity. So if you have vehicles that are left unlocked, poorly lit areas, no one's brought that up yet as far as, lighting deters crime. There's a study that we found that we can go ahead and mention to you, and people that say, like, look, lighting doesn't matter. People commit crimes when the sun is out, right? No, I mean, they obviously do. They do commit crimes during the day, but at the same time, it's a crime of opportunity. If think about it, if you're an opportunist, if you will, and you're looking inside, you're looking down a street there isn't any lighting at all, and you have a street that's lit up, you're not going to go down that street that's lit up. You're going to check the cars down the street because you won't be seen. Okay, I mean, you can put that in your frame of mind if you want. Now, to be sensitive towards light pollution, we're not denying that's a thing. That's a thing. Right, so we'd recommend if you want to use lights, use LEDs or compact fluorescents. That's what you should use. So be sensitive to that as well. I mean, lighting can deter crime. There's some studies that we can refer to you if you can take a look at yourself. We're not going to talk about them now because it's going to take up well after our hour to get out of here. So, but we will refer those to you, and you can make them. We will. We respect your position if you don't think it's important, but I hope you respect our position as we do, because that's what we're in law enforcement, and it's important for us to deter crime as much as we can.
I think, just to take that one step farther is, so also making sure your guns are locked up properly in your home. That's another opportunity you're reducing, right? Taking your garage door opener out of your car, and those little tips that we've all been hearing a lot about lately. Gloria, did you have any comments about the youth, and any thoughts on what we can do as a community to help deter this crime?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nate, I agree with you as far as lights go. But this past summer, like, our kids were like getting bold, and they were out during the day checking cars and stealing cars. Like, just in my own experience, is my daylight. There were, and I'm laughing about it because it's really just it's just really bold. These young people who are taking cars from driveways, daylight. It happened to my neighbors. Like, it was an attempt, and it is happening. And so, and this has been happening for the past 3-5 years, right? We saw this spiral happening in our communities. And I think for our youth, for one thing, there's nothing, we have a lot of kids who are experiencing significant trauma. They're unsupervised. They're not engaged in school, particularly now more than ever, right, with COVID. And there was nothing to do before COVID, right? And there's nothing to do for them during COVID. So when I was the deputy mayor to public safety, we saw an uptick, an increase in the stolen vehicles and the car break-ins and the burglaries and of young people. And so we convened a group of stakeholders to really figure out how do we respond to this. And one of the solutions was developing a mentorship program. And it's called the Opportunity Youth Coalition. It was led by United Way, the school district, and other partners. And so really bringing in mentors with lived experience to engage these youth who were arrested in JRC, who were they just kept recommitting. Like they would go to JRC, come back out and steal another vehicle or break in and continue that. And so one of the options we developed was the mentorship program. We don't see the results because it's so new yet, but it is promising, right? When you have lived, you have men who with lived experience, men and women with lived experience, who are engaging youth and trying to really change their trajectory and their decision making, and to make better decisions, right? And work with them in getting employment and other options, right? I mean, it feels sort of like pushing them through the criminal justice system is one option, but it's a revolving door, as we all know, right? And it costs taxpayers money. We arrest them, we get them in JRC, they come back out, they continue the behavior. So what else can we do as a community to really think outside the box to support and change the trajectory of the lives of young people who are experiencing significant trauma? That was one option, and there are many ideas and opportunities that I'm sure Monona Police Department and others have to really deal with this issue. It's a definite challenge. We just got to keep at it.
I was talking with a friend who started the midnight basketball program in Beloit, which when I started reading about it, it just seems brilliant. It's a the kids get to join legitimate basketball teams. They go from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. But before they can get on a team, they have to take some mandatory workshops. One is like a behavioral class. They get uniforms and shoes. If they have any warrants or they have child support payments due, they have to set up a payment plan before they even get an opportunity to play. If they're late for any of the workshops, they don't get to start the game that week. And the timing was really key. He said someone else tried to do it from a 6 to 9 p.m. standpoint. And he said, then it worked completely the opposite because they were all revved up and the nightlife was just kicking in, where the 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. timeframe worked well because they were exhausted and they went home. And it seemed like that was just a really cool program, but like you said, out of the box. I don't know is Madison looking at anything like that? I feel like we don't have a lot of gang activity in Monona, I don't believe. Do you know if Madison's looking at a chapter like that?
Yeah, Madison, I know has done that, where officers, right, are I think they did it at the YMCA, right, Nate? I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but I think the Madison Police Department did do that at the YMCA, and it was successful. They had a lot of kids who would play, and then oftentimes they would develop teams where it was the MPD against a team of kids. I mean, it was really, really helpful. But things like that, I think we just have to continue to invest in our time, and so very beneficial to do stuff like that at midnight. Exactly.
Yeah. It's for the night owls.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing, is it takes a lot of people that are willing to help and volunteer and be a part of these programs. So another question I got, well, I wanted to acknowledge Kim Richmond posted a comment just saying crimes of opportunity are 90 to 95%. What does that statistic exactly mean? Do you guys know? That
He's probably mentioning stolen autos from the Madison Police Department. I have if you look up what they released to me and to the public in 2019, 379 out of 445 of their stolen autos for that year. This is what they gave me. I don't know if this was exactly 2019, but this was within that time frame of late 2018, late 2019. But either way, you get the idea. 85.2% of those autos had the keys in them or they were rarely accessible, right? So that's that crime of opportunity. So when he's taking that 90-95%, that's what he's referring to. It's the 90-95%, it's they're preventable crimes. And it doesn't, and we don't mean to pick on the victims here. I mean, they were trusting people. They love their neighborhood. They wouldn't think it would happen. And no one does. That's why it happens. So I'm not here to judge or make them feel bad about what happened. They just had to learn a really hard way, and it shouldn't have happened to them anyway. That's the bottom line. However, it's the world we live in, and it's up to you to prevent it. So, and think about it. If officers had, instead of looking for 30 stolen vehicles potentially at a time, what if we only had like 2 or 3 to look for? How much easier would that patrol officer's job be to locate a stolen vehicle? So I think that's what Kim's referring to.
Okay.
When he says.
And that puts the responsibility on us as citizens. The responsibility is ours
We can make a
to
difference.
shut down the opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of that's just new habits, right?
Yeah. Very quick. Very, very, very easy to do.
Yeah. Does someone want to talk about the 9 p.m.? There's like the 9 p.m. routine.
Yeah, I can, because I'm in that Geneva project in Madison, and so every night around 6, 7 o'clock, there's multiple social media pages in the area, multiple ways of communicating. Just remind you, hey, did you lock everything up? Did you secure your property? Turn your lights on sometime before 9 o'clock, or usually at 9 o'clock or whenever. And it's benefited me. I've come in from walking my dog at late, 8 o'clock or so. When we get in the side, and I look at our Facebook page or whatever it is before I go to bed or before I turn in. And then I see that message, hey, did you lock? I'm like, man, I don't even know if I locked my side door when I brought my dog in. So then I went out, and sure enough, I didn't. So now, can we quantify that result? Of course not. Who knows what would have happened? But and I think if everyone goes and locks their door, they're reminded this program works. We can do it. It's really easy. We just have to buy into it. And giving those numbers, like the 90-95% rule, it can put teeth in what we're saying, get people to buy in. It's an easy thing we can all do, and we can all work together.
We can all set an alarm on our phones for 9 p.m. to remind us. So, Alder Thomas has a question. She says, we are surrounded by Madison, and how does that impact our crime rate?
I don't have exact statistics for that, but what I could have our analyst run the information. And I'm confident that a lot of our arrests and citations are not Monona residents. So we have a large volume of traffic that comes through Monona on a daily basis using the Beltline, Monona Drive. And so we have, our crashes, we have our traffic enforcement, and oftentimes, these are not Monona residents. We have a large retail facility here in Monona. Not that none of our residents go out there and commit retail thefts, but there's a good portion of them that are not Monona residents. So, just being surrounded by Madison and other communities, we have people that come in, and that does affect the crimes that are committed here.
One question we got prior to the event was, what should we do if we see a vehicle with no plates or no temporary plates? Plenty of people follow the rules, so why aren't these people pulled over to make sure there's no bigger issues at hand?
If they're not operating the vehicle and it's parked on the roadway, there isn't a lot a patrol officer is able to do. Currently, with COVID happening, they actually did place some restrictions on stopping vehicles for vehicle registration because of the inability to get to a DMV service center to register vehicles and renew vehicles. So, you know, when you see something like that, you certainly can call us. If we have officers in the area, we will certainly have an officer watch for the vehicle. But generally, you know, if the officers do see those violations, that is something that they would make a traffic stop for, you know, that kind of a traffic violation. So the problem is we're, again, not always right where you are, and we may not always be able to apprehend that vehicle. It might be one that you see every day that's coming through. And so, you know, you kind of go, why aren't they stopping this person? I see them come through here every day. Well, we don't always, again, have officers there every day able to watch for that. You know, if we're responding to other calls or just in general, you know, we can't be everywhere at the same time.
Absolutely.
And just to mention, like, if we're not, we stop them all the time. You know, as far as my experience is concerned, if our officer's behind you, you don't have a license plate in the rear vehicle or at least a temp taped in the back window, our officers are going to stop you. And the question referenced, should I call it in? If when in doubt, call it in. It's not always necessary because it's pretty prevalent right now. A lot of people don't have their vehicles registered, and is it a sign that the vehicle potentially be stolen? Maybe. I'd rather associate a driving behavior with that. If it's going to compel you to call it in, by all means, call us. If they're driving like it isn't their car, right? They're flying up and down Monona Drive or wherever, driving like they're not worried about the condition of the car. That can give you a pretty good idea that might not be their car. And if they don't have a license plate, well, then we'd want to hear about it. It's a good question. I think I answered it recently, maybe not to the question's satisfaction, but you know, that is a challenge for us. And if you feel compelled to call them, by all means, when in doubt, call.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Kristie, so, you know, I think that, I mean, this is another opportunity to think outside the box, right? I mean, I think, you know, if registration, I mean, is expensive. Like, it's even like, I look at mine, like, and I'm like, wow, like, I'm glad I have a job because this would be really hard to pay for right now, right? I mean, feed my kids or that. I mean, it's really, having a car is a big responsibility, right? You got to have insurance, you got to plate, registration, and I'm not making excuses, but it really is an opportunity for us to think outside the box of how do we engage that, right? And so I think if we do know of a vehicle that is that continuously just is not following the rules, like what is it that we can do to help support, like, or help, like, give them a ticket, but like make sure that they are able to get their registration done within so many days, so that, and then we'll drop the ticket or something, you know, stuff like that, right? I think that, so I think the person would be like, okay, I better pay this registration, right? Otherwise I'm going to have to pay the extra cost with whatever comes, you know, into that. Now I'm not talking about all these other like serious situations that may arise from a traffic stop, but like if it's just a registration, you know, Monona could really, you know, just really consider thinking about a practice where I'm going to give you this ticket, but you have so many days to, you know, to get your registration and get your car taken care of, and we'll drop this, you know, citation or something. If you have that kind of flexibility, I think it's an opportunity so that we don't continue to see the same person riding around without a, you know, registration.
Can I just make a comment, Kristie?
Yep.
Just looking at some of the statistics that I do have here, you know, in 2000, we wrote 1,046 traffic citations, but we also wrote 598 traffic warnings. So our officers are regularly issuing warnings for traffic violations, registration violations, and that kind of thing.
Great. Someone's commented, Erica has commented that she talks about the Drive to Succeed program. I've not heard of that. She says it's for youth ages 17 to 21 years old, justice involved, without a driver's license and without a high school diploma. She goes on to add that youth will receive mentoring while working towards a high school diploma and their driver's license. It's a collaborative partnership between Operation Fresh Start and Just Dane. Yeah, has anyone heard about that? It sounds pretty interesting. Another out of the box kind of idea.
Yeah, I have, now that you mentioned Operation First Start, I know that they have a driver's license program and
That must be it.
support. Yeah, definitely. Another, right, thinking outside the box.
So there's been a couple comments about the high levels of speeding. So someone said they were driving home tonight and saw someone going over 60 on Monona Drive. They're asking, what's Monona PD doing about that?
I wish we were in position to run radar on that car. They said was going 60 miles an hour. If we weren't in the area, I'm sorry. But like Sara said, we can't always be there. But if they want to let us know where it happened, what time it happened, maybe we can. Again, that's problem-oriented policing, right? So we can focus in the future. Maybe have an officer in that area at that particular time, and if it's a habit that they do, maybe we can catch up with that car and hold them accountable and at least deter it from happening again. So that's important for us. The first thing letting us know about is important. And then we can take appropriate action if we are in position to respond to it.
Kristie, the other thing is too, we do participate in some special grants that focus on things like speed or seatbelt or OWI enforcement, and so officers are specifically assigned to address those things. And if we know that, as Nate said, that we've got areas where there are violations, we can have our officers focus on those areas when they do run those grants.
And is it helpful? Should citizens try to get a plate number when we call in? Is that a good practice, or does that help you in any way?
They could get a plate, but the problem that we fall into is just a license plate doesn't identify the driver. So it might identify who owns the vehicle. It's not going to identify who is actually committing the traffic violation. And as you can imagine, we don't always get cooperation when we contact registered owners of vehicles. So, if they feel very strongly about it, a license plate, if they can get a description of the person that's driving, we can follow up with the registered owner and try to identify that person. But with a case like that, we really need, if we don't witness the violation ourselves, we need a witness who would be willing to testify in court if we were going to issue a citation. We can't just contact this person and issue them a citation. So, those are the things that we can do. But obviously, if they're doing that, we would encourage them never to put themselves in danger to get a plate or to get a description of somebody.
Yeah, he said they were going too fast to get a plate number.
Yeah.
So
If they're going 60 miles an hour, good luck getting a plate driving by.
yeah. Someone has a question asking about, does anyone from the city or the police make contact with some of the homeless living here in Monona? The weather is turning really cold this week, and he's got concerns about their safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something we're very sensitive to, that population. I mean, we refer to them, as in being in between places, right? And so we always mention that to them. We try to use that term with them, and immediately their outlook towards us is a lot different. So, but yeah, it's been a challenge. I think there's as much support as there's going to be as far as the avenues we can exhaust in a particular area, and people oftentimes are welcoming to accept those avenues we exhaust for them. But again, it's a challenge because the next day is a new day, and sometimes there's a new avenue to exhaust. But we're doing the best we can. But it does happen from time to time for us.
I mean, I think that this is another sort of way we can help law enforcement, right? I mean, we have to invest in resources to support our homeless population, mental health. I mean, and not rely on law enforcement to solve our societal issues. And I think law enforcement, we need sensitive law enforcement, police officers who will take the approach of being proactive and support and connecting people to resources, but they can't be the be all end all. And so it really is it's an opportunity for community services and support to really invest in our residents who are living in poverty, are trying to find housing, experiencing mental health, homeless, and really have people who are experts in those areas to provide support to our homeless population. And meanwhile, supporting law enforcement in that they're not necessarily having to respond to a complaint of a homeless person, all the time. That police officers can be police officers, and in partnership with people, social service agencies who can support that community.
Yeah, I remember it was this summer, I ran into a woman, I was talking with her in the Walgreens parking lot, and she was obviously distraught. So I reached out to her, and she had been in had an incident with her boyfriend. And so she was asking me if I could call someone to come and get her or help her. But she had, no family, no resources. So I called DAYS, Domestic Abuse Intervention Services, but they told me we don't have those resources to go and get someone. And, so I just was like, I felt her exasperation with, and desperation of not having any resources available. Is there any program or services that's in existence right now that allows people to bring a van and get someone?
Yeah, I mean, this is, this was an approach that I worked on when I was in the mayor's office, in that it was in response to really the same issue, right? It was, I worked with the National League of Cities in looking at our data on police calls for service, and again, trying to find an innovative approach to, like, why are law enforcement officers responding to mental health crisis situations? Obviously, they're needed when they're needed, but is there another approach? And we looked at the CAHOOTS model, where it was like an ambulance, a mental health, a social service support system that would respond in partnership with law enforcement. And there were, experts who would respond and support, women, like, people like this woman who was experiencing a crisis situation, and connecting that person with services. And it is something that the city is continuing the work, and they're approaching funding and supporting something like this. And so it would be, yeah, definitely amazing. Maybe a smaller team of people within Monona or Dane County who can have this approach, where they're responding to support officers and social service agencies who not necessarily don't have the capacity to respond to situations, boots on the ground, respond to situations as they're happening. And meet residents where they're at is so important. So that's where this model comes from. It's called the CAHOOTS model. And I'm not sure where they're at right now as far as success and, what they're showing, but it seemed really, really promising.
Awesome. Boy, so it looks like we're 8:03. I do have there's one last question. It's for Nate and Sara. Do you feel our police officers could use better training moving forward?
Honestly, I don't think anybody could ever say that they've had too much training. So, it's definitely something we continue to train on an annual basis. Officers are required to have 24 hours a year of training, different areas, firearms and defense and arrest tactics. We've got many different areas that are required, but again, anyone would benefit from additional training. What happens is, we have budget constraints that we have to work with. And so we do try to get our officers additional training above and beyond that 24 hours as we can, and as is allowed by our budgets.
So since we're kind of wrapping up here, does everyone want to maybe give one last takeaway that they would like people to know, or how they can help? We can all go around.
Can I just go off of what
Yeah.
last question?
Absolutely.
Training is critical. I mean, I think with what's happening across the country and here locally around the distrust between law enforcement and our communities of color, that is an area that we have not focused so much of our efforts around, right? We have to really commit ourselves as law enforcement agencies to get to the root issues of race within policing, understanding the history around race in policing, right? And committing ourselves to be an anti-racist organization. And, it's the work that I do within my own organization that I work in, right? It is really committing to that. It's important to set policies, procedures, when you're training your officers on tactics, de-escalation, that you're centering around race, because that really is the underlying issues and challenges facing our police departments. And so that's what I just want to leave with. I think that it is important to continue to train officers, and in the long run, it helps them. It helps them in the future. It helps the law enforcement organization to build legitimacy and trust with their residents. And so, yeah, thank you.
So that's your takeaway there, Gloria. That's a great one to end on.
Yeah.
Sara, do you have a takeaway?
Overall, since the focus here kind of was, the perception of crime happening here in Monona, just to, again, knowing your neighbor and being watchful over each other and taking that extra step to take care of each other, I think is very important.
That's an excellent point. Nate?
And just go off training what you said before. Can we use more training? Our department's as talented as it's been since I've been here for 15 years. I love the people I work with. I love our cops. I love our dispatchers, our administrators. I'm ready for the next 15, to be honest with you. So whatever training that comes down our way, we have an open mind to getting better. But this is a very talented group. I'm excited to work with them every day. And, as far as coming together as a community, we're going to have a lot of fundraising events coming up. Keep your eyes peeled on our social media pages as we, carefully get through this pandemic safely. We're going to be able to let some of these plans out to the public, and we're excited for that. So keep an eye on that. But yeah, that's all I've got. Whoever was here the whole time or came up and watches it, tomorrow recorded, please get a hold of me if you want to get involved. I'd love to hear from you. And again, we have to do this together as a community, and we'll get to where we need to get to.
Absolutely. I would add my takeaway would be that if you are in either in your profession or just in your daily life, if you ever interact with at-risk youth, this is something that just happened to me in high school. Was nobody ever asked me where I was going to go to college or what I wanted to be when I grew up. I saw them asking all of my friends that, but no one ever asked me that. And I really never thought about my future beyond tomorrow. And so just a simple question like that can just be a game changer, because it makes a kid think, wow, I actually might have a future. How would I get there? What would I do? And it can open a door that's just, it seems so obvious, but it's actually not when you're in those shoes. So I think it's a nice thing to do. Easy one too. So thank you all for being here. We had a lot of people, 25 people that stuck it out with us the whole time. So fantastic. Thanks, Nate and Sara and Gloria, for your time. And I hope, we can all work together. And the goal is we all have the same goal, right? To be a better community and to help elevate each other. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you for putting it together.
Bye, guys.
Have a great night.
You too.